All right. I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you checked out the national title game last night. Really wasn't a close one, but it's still fun to watch. That being said, we're going to move on today. We're going to talk a little bit about the 1920s, a flapper. Okay, the women in the 1920s and how their roles changed a little bit more than what we talked about in progressive era. So we're going to discuss that, go over it, and we're going to move on. So I know I said about that project presentation, but I think I'm going to wait till next week until most of you are all here, and we can talk a little bit about what topics you want, so we're not all doing the same topic. So I'll just wait till next week to go over that with you, and that kind of be the last thing for the 1920s. It's a quick chapter. It's not going to be really discussed much more because we got to get to the Great Depression and then only World War II. And obviously things are going a little slower this year just because there's a lot going on. I connect to students online and in the class. It's just a little bit of a slower pace. But hey, it is what it is. We're getting through it. All right, so real quick, bell ringer for today. You know how it is. Bell ringer at the start of class every day, usually every day. It's no wonder where to find them at all. Some still don't know where to look yet, but it is what it is. All right, so describe the Scopes trial, 1925. How did this trial create stronger tension in the U.S. between modernists and fundamentalists? So I'll give you a few seconds. You can look that up, complete it, or obviously just from what you remember yesterday. Complete that, and we'll go over it. So pause the video. Work on it. All right, so here you go. Scopes trial, 1925. So this was an issue, obviously, over the teachings of evolution in public schools. And in Tennessee, there was a law created to try to prevent the teachings of these types of new evolutionary theories that might challenge religion and traditionalist, fundamentalist styles and fundamentals. Okay. And that family aspect, right, which was really deeply rooted in the South. So with the Scopes trial, obviously Scopes, he was a substitute teacher at the time, came in and thought, you know what, I'm not gonna try to persuade anybody's opinion about it, but I think this is a theory that we need to discuss. It's getting a lot of attention, okay, and it's good explanation of maybe where how humans maybe evolved over time. And he talked about it, he discussed over it in his classroom. And obviously the kids went home and they talked to their families about what they just learned in class today and this theory of evolution. And the parents had a huge uproar about it because, again, this challenged their traditionalists, their religious values. So they went to the school board. They're saying, hey, get rid of this guy. He stinks. He's talking about evolution and it's really challenging religion and our core values here at home. This isn't good. This is going to cause a lot more problems, right? We can't let our rural communities or small communities turn into what's going on in these bigger, larger cities where entertainment's taking toll. People are drinking. People are not thinking about God, right? So this all the way went up to as a huge court decision. It gained a lot of popularity because this was really one of the first court cases that was broadcasted to the American public. So people all over the country were sitting around at home, listening to it on the radio, reading about it in newspapers, magazines, and this was really something that brought the attention and caught the eye of the American people because this was a struggle between fundamentalists and modernists. And we talk about it: fundamentalists, traditionalists, religious style values, family core values, okay, deeply rooted in religion; modernists, new, I guess you could say, acceptance of lifestyle and entertainment, drinking, accepting of new scientific reasoning. And this was a huge clash in the United States. And this court case created a bigger clash. So in the court case, there was a lot of public scene there. All right. There was a lot of media attention at this court case. And Clarence Darrow was a lawyer who was backing Scopes, right, saying that, hey, this man, he deserves, he shouldn't be casted away and fined and maybe thrown in jail because of his teachings of this respected theory, right? And then William Jennings Bryan was defending the state of Tennessee, and he was really backing the fundamentalists, okay, backing the traditionalists. So this court case was groundbreaking because Darrow actually put Scopes in, or yeah, sorry, Darrow actually put William Jennings Bryan pretty much on blast, the way you guys would talk about it today. And William Jennings Bryan had no way to really counteract what Darrow was explaining with his reasoning behind Scopes talking about this scientific theory. And it really just showed that Darrow and these new methods, these new forms of science should be accepted in schools and shouldn't be really cast out to the side because it may challenge a religious belief or a religious thought, right? And it came down to the court's decision, and they sided with William Jennings Bryan. Okay, they fined Scopes, and Scopes lost this court decision, but this was groundbreaking because not everybody thought that they should have won, right? But it just shows where the court was at the moment, that they were backing these fundamentalist views, okay, these traditionalist views, right? That America wasn't just yet accepting these new modernist ideas, okay? And this is why it was so groundbreaking. All right, so with the Scopes trial, make sure you remember, okay, Scopes teaching about evolution, Darrow backing him up, and really winning the court case, but the court actually decided with William Jennings Bryan, okay, and the traditionalist fundamentalist views. Still today, they do reenactments of the court case. I think they go to that place in Tennessee and talk a little bit about it. They go to the parks and kind of reenact it, show movies about it and documentaries, and it's a pretty cool scene, I guess, from what I read and what I see, but it just goes to show how groundbreaking this court case really was and where we were as a country, divided as accepting new views and science, rhetoric, you name it, and then still stuck with traditionalist, fundamentalist religious values. Okay, there you go. That is a bell ringer for today. Okay, real quick, vocab. I know I didn't go over too many just yet, but we're right now at flapper, so we already went over installment buying, bull market, mass production, modernism, fundamentalism, KKK, prohibition, 18th Amendment, Volstead Act, bootlegger, and now we're at flapper. All right, so again, I'm not hiding where you get vocab, okay? We just didn't get there just yet. I want to try to discuss these vocab terms as I'm going over it in class. So, term today, flapper. I'll give you a second, write that down. All right, a flapper is a woman that is right around teens, early 20s, young adulthood, okay? And this is where women were kind of accepting these new modernist views. They were wearing looser clothing. They were going to bars or going to entertainment scenes. Obviously, with the right to vote, they had the opportunity for, a job in the workplace, education. Okay, and this was a way that women kind of let their hair down a little bit and really just acted out to a point where they're accepting these new modernist views. And to many people, like in the rural setting, right, the fundamentalists, the traditionalists, they hated this. They couldn't believe that women were showing their knees, right, wearing these dresses that were tight, showing their figure. Okay, so for many years, women wore these dresses that pretty much came all the way up to her head. You couldn't even see her toes, right? But now all of a sudden with the flappers in the 1920s, women were wearing looser style clothing. They were showing a little bit more skin, showing their shoulders, their knees, you name it. And for many people, this was a huge shock. It's to the point where, like grandparents and parents today, whenever they hear the song WAP, right? And whenever they see some of the clothing that maybe you all wear, right? And what you listen to, it's just a huge cultural shock to them that you guys are partaking in this new style of fashion, music, entertainment, you name it, okay? And we can kind of, make the resemblance with that. All right, so that's flapper. There you go. So today, I just want to talk about women in the 1920s. All right, so Section 220s, woman. So after World War I, Americans were looking for a little fun, 1920s, right? Because every other country in the world was pretty much destroyed. The United States was really the only one standing, and they could really our industrialization, our factories, our companies were booming. And this gave us a little bit more time to, really focus on ourselves. And we're making a lot of money. Okay, that's why they call it the Roaring Twenties. All right, so women were becoming more independent and achieving greater freedoms, right to vote, employment, freedom to drive as well. So these were things that I talked about before, and this was something that never has been seen before. That women were stepping out of those roles where they're just, popping out babies and sticking to that traditionalist style of, what the woman should be. Okay, being a mother. Okay, really not partaking in a job or schooling. Things like that. But now women are going to entertainment centers. They're going to movies. They are listening to music that really has been never seen before with jazz, which we'll talk about or heard before. Like I said, wearing these new garments and dresses that showed skin. Many people couldn't believe what they were seeing. And they had a lot more freedoms too that really challenged that fundamentalist traditionalist values that people had in these rural settings. So this created an even bigger divide in those two groups and those two lifestyles in America. All right, so the flapper. So this is what I was talking about earlier. So with the type of dress, okay, and how women were really just going out and having a fun time. And you mostly see this out in urban areas, larger cities, where women would go and drink, and listen to music. They go out and have fun with the boys, right? Saturday isn't just for the boys, right? It's for the women too, especially in the 1920s. So women were going out, having fun, enjoying their time, and living life to the fullest. And again, rural setting, they didn't agree with this. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, what they were witnessing, what they were hearing in radios, over the radio, what they were seeing in newspapers, right? So over the media, they were seeing what was going on in these bigger cities, right? These people in these rural settings, and they were just so shocked. All right, where the country was going. I can't believe what direction our country is, heading towards. It's crazy. Women wearing clothing that, they show their knees, and show their arms, and skin, you name it. It's crazy stuff. All right, so like I said before, fashion was changing. Okay, women were entering the workplace as nurses, teachers, librarians, secretaries. So jobs not really, obviously, to the point where they're getting exhausted, lifting things up, really, blue collar type of lifestyle, but mostly working as teachers, librarians, and secretaries, but making a wage, working. And this was something that's really never been seen before. This is towards the end of the progressive era. So, however, women earn less than men and weren't kept out of traditional male jobs, management, and faced discrimination. So, although they've seen opportunities, they still weren't paid near as much as what men were making doing the same job, doing the same occupation. Okay, they were left out of, like I said, management positions where they couldn't be a supervisor or administrator, right? Some of those decisions were still left to the man, and slowly but surely, women were gaining more opportunities. Okay, and even today, there's a lot of movements where women think, and express that they aren't treated fairly and equally as men. All right, so early 20s, women were finally stepping out of that traditionalist threshold. Okay, out of that old mold, I guess you could say. All right, so changing family, real quick. So birth rates declined for several decades before the 1920s. Okay, and this was something that had to do with birth control clinics, new forms of sciences. Right, so sciences were now appearing in the 1920s, where different types of antibiotics. Okay, eventually vaccines, which will be still later down the road, but there's an increased role and idea of where we should go with different types of medical clinics, okay, hospitals being created to help Americans out. Now, still at this time, there wasn't hospitals and practice centers and physical therapy, things like that, in almost every town like we might have it today. This was something that still wasn't really thought about where we should go as a country for trying to protect our citizens, right? This is still almost stuck in the Stone Age in a way. So in the 1920s, we now see in appearing physicians, doctors, practice centers in communities and in small towns all across America. which is really advancing that scientific theories, okay, reasoning, right? And I'm not saying a total breakaway from religion, because still religion was used heavily in decisions in the 1920s, obviously with the Scopes trial, but just more acceptance of science and education. All right, so Modern Family, okay, like I mentioned before, so women at that time, in the late 1800s, all the way back in the day, they were almost chosen to pick their romantic partner by their father, okay, their father figure. And a lot of that has to do with maybe land, okay, farming, maybe it's a business, okay, keep them, obviously in the right direction, and the father would pick the loved one. But now all of a sudden that's changing as women were gaining more opportunities and freedoms. Okay, so that came to a point where women get to decide who they would like their loved ones to be. And for many of these people in traditional households, they couldn't believe what they're seeing. In many cases, it's to a point where women thought they thought women as kind of moving from man to man to man, and that's obviously not accepting in these traditional households. And giving them the freedoms to really choose who they want to be as their loved one. And that's something that really was a challenge to, again, these two groups of people in the United States. All right, that's all I got today. So remember the flappers. So that's a key term I'd like you to remember, and how women's roles are changing even more after the Progressive Era, after World War One. Okay, a lot of that has to do with World War One. Okay, and how public officials thought women should gain their freedoms, their independence, and have the opportunities as males. All right, there you go, guys. That's all I got for today. Have a good one. Take care, and we'll see you later.